Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is come. And you might be able to tell from the note at the bottom of the screen, this is actually going to be our verb of the week. And that's because there are so many phrasal verbs connected to this particular verb. But let's begin our discussion today by looking at some general definitions or general ways to use the verb come. The first way many people use this verb is to get someone or something to move or travel toward a particular place. Maybe you've had somebody say to you, come here, right? They want you to move closer or toward them. Okay. Might also have heard somebody ask another person to come to a particular room. Right? All of those things were moving into a particular place or space. A second way the verb come gets used can mean to travel in order to be with someone, to do something, or maybe just to be present at a particular event. I know many times I have students who say things like, I can't come to class. That would connect to that third part of that second definition. They're not going to be present for class. A third way come gets used can mean to occur, to happen, or to take place. I know just in the last day or so, I heard a meteorologist, a person on the television who talks about the weather, tries to keep people safe, that a storm was coming to a particular city, right? It was going to occur or happen very shortly. A fourth way you might hear come used can mean to reach, rather eventually, either a certain condition or a state of mind. You might hear someone say, I came to understand that, right? And it's kind of saying like, they learned this information, they now know whatever that piece of information is. Now, you should know that come is an irregular verb. To make the progressive form of the verb, what you're going to do is drop the E on the end because we have a verb that ends in the vowel consonant E pattern. You're going to do that before you add the ing suffix, and that forms coming. The past tense form of our verb is going to require a spelling change. We're going to change the O to an A, and we're going to pronounce this with a long A sound, came. Okay. To make the participle form of the verb, we're going to change back to the base verb. And I think that's something that can be confusing for many people who are learning English. So our irregular forms, I don't know if you ever do that with a teacher, but come, came, come. Right? Sometimes it can be helpful to learn them together in that way. Now we are ready to move on to some phrasal verbs. I'm going to be discussing a lot of phrasal verbs over the next few videos. We're going to start with come about. This phrasal verb ties back to something we just talked about. We use it to mean something is happening, something is going to materialize. An example of this. This new rule came about rather quickly in the early weeks of the pandemic. There were a lot of new sort of jobs, new positions created. So this job materialized. It was created in maybe late March 2020 or early April 2020. That's an example of a simple past tense sentence. Now let's move on to another phrasal verb. The next one we'll discuss is to come across. This can have a couple different meanings. One might be to be viewed by others in a particular way. So an example of this. He comes across as very serious in meetings, but he jokes around often. Here's a simple present tense sentence. We're describing kind of a habit or routine. We're saying when people meet him, they think, oh, this is someone who's quite serious, maybe quite proper, but really he does have a sense of humor. That's the second part there. A second way to use come across can mean to find or see someone or something incidentally. So you might think here kind of like as an accident. It wasn't something you were looking for directly, but It happens. An example of this. If you come across the letter, please let me know. So maybe this has happened to you in your office or at your home. You know you had something, right? Maybe it's a letter in this case, but it's gone missing. So you tell your coworkers or you tell your family, right? If you happen to see this, grab it, tell me, so that I can get it back. This "if you come across" is an example of a conditional. The next phrasal verb we're going to discuss today is to come after. This can also have a few different meanings. We're going to talk about 3 of them. One means really just to be positioned after something else. An example of this: your performance will come after the intermission. Here's a simple future sentence using will, right? So we're kind of discussing a prediction of what will occur later. Intermission, you might think of like a little break. This occurs many times in the theater. People can stretch, get up, use the bathroom. Here, we know the next position is this person's performance. A second way to use come after means to pursue or seek someone or something out. An example of this: the police came after the alleged thief. So here you might kind of think ran after them, maybe drove very quickly, trying to pursue or take into custody that person they think has committed a crime. That's another simple past tense sentence there. The last way we can use come after means to be of a lesser concern. This is something we just don't think it's as important. Let's look at an example. Extracurricular activities should come after your schoolwork. Okay, so here we have our modal. We're giving advice with should. Extracurricular are those things that are kind of outside school. Maybe it's music related, playing in a band, performing as part of a choir. Maybe it's other clubs, sports, those types of extra activities. So here, saying it needs to be less important than the actual schoolwork, your studying, your participation in class, and so forth. Another phrasal verb you might encounter is to come along. This generally is used to mean that someone is improving or making progress. And here's an example of this: your pronunciation is coming along. Here is an example of the present progressive or the present continuous, right? We are suggesting that it is improving. Let's move on and talk about some other ways to use come along. Another way to use this phrasal verb means to go with another person to a particular place. Here is an example and a question: can my spouse come along? Here it might be asking for permission for, in my case, my husband to join us. A third way to use the verb come along means to materialize or emerge. Here is an example of that: a better option will come along for us, right? So it kind of means like it's going to pop up. It's going to be presented to us. That's another simple future sentence. Let's talk about the phrasal verb come around. This can also have a number of different meanings. We're going to talk about 3 of them. The first is to regain consciousness. So perhaps after an accident, an injury, maybe a medical procedure as well, right? Someone might not be awake or conscious. And so you can see in our question here, is the patient coming around now, right? Are they starting to kind of wake up, realize where they are, maybe after not being awake? That's another present progressive sentence. Another way to use come around means to happen or occur regularly. An example of how you might hear this used: Monday morning comes around quickly. Okay? So many people have this feeling about the weekend. those Saturdays, Sundays, they can go so quickly. And when you have to return back to work on Mondays, it can seem like, oh, those other days, our rest days, just disappeared. A third way to use come around can mean to change one's position or their views on something. An example of this: will they ever come around to our reasoning? Here we're kind of asking, are they going to agree with what we have to say? Another phrasal verb you might encounter is to come at. This can also have several different meanings. Here's one. It might be how we approach a particular issue or problem. An example of this: we've been coming at this problem in the wrong way. Right? So here we might be saying we need to alter or change our approach. Okay? We've been coming at the problem is an example of the present perfect progressive or present perfect continuous. A second way to use come at means to move in a rather aggressive or hostile manner toward some other person. An example of this comes as an imperative, a command. Don't come at that stray dog. It could bite you, right? So don't move closer to it in what appears to be an aggressive or hostile way where the dog is going to feel threatened and possibly attack. A third way you might hear come at use can mean to barrage someone with something. So here you might think about like items being thrown at another person. That could be a barrage, but it can also happen with our words. So an example of this might be, questions have been coming at me all morning, right? So lots of people asking, maybe I'm getting text messages, phone calls, emails, right? All happening at the same time. That's another present perfect progressive or present perfect continuous sentence. Let's talk about a few more phrasal verbs. The next one we'll discuss is to come away with. This can have a couple different meanings. One might be to depart completion, having acquired something. An example of this might be, what did you come away with from this course? Okay, so this is a question many teachers love to hear students answer and share a bit with us about, right? We're kind of wanting to know, what did you learn? Maybe what skills did you acquire? What new knowledge do you have once you've completed our class? Another way to use come away with might mean to travel somewhere. And many times this is used with kind of romantic trips between partners. So an example of this, maybe one says to another, come away with me to the beach. Right? So they're asking that person, travel with me. That's another imperative or a command. One more phrasal verb for our discussion today, and that's to come back. This can have a few different meanings. One might be to return to a place or to return to an individual. An example of this, when do you come back to work? That's a WH or more information kind of question in the simple present. A second way to use come back means to return to one's memory, right? So it's kind of like you've forgotten something, but it's going to appear again. An example of this, her name will come back to me, right? So if somebody's saying, oh, just give me a second, just wait a moment, I'm going to remember. That's another simple future sentence. Another way come back gets used can mean to reply in a rather snarky or sort of mean kind of way. An example of this, he came back with a rude reply when I asked a simple question. Here is another simple past tense sentence. Okay? So we're saying he replied in kind of an unnecessarily rude way. Our fourth way to use the phrasal verb come back can mean to overcome a deficit. This is used a great deal in connection to sports. So let's pretend we have Team A winning a particular match or game, and then all of a sudden Team B scores, moves ahead, and that's the final. Team B wins. We might describe them coming back. They are overcoming, kind of being the loser earlier in the game, and now they're the winner. An example of this in a sentence. Will a team come back in the second half? Right? So here, maybe we're asking our friends, our family to make a prediction. Again, that's in the simple future as well. Now, I hope you'll note real quickly, this is not all of our phrasal verbs with come. There are going to be more in the next 3 days videos. So I hope you'll tune back in tomorrow for more phrasal verbs. But I do want to leave us with some words and phrases that are also connected to our verb of the day. The first thing I want to note is that come can also be a preposition. Sometimes when people use this, they're talking about when a specified time is reached or when some event happens. Let's take a look at an example of that. Come August, the kids are going to be bored and ready to go back to school. Okay? So what this sentence is saying, by the time we get to August, right, there's our specified time. And then it's going to explain, right, what's going to happen or what's going to be true. So you might see that come and then a particular date or a time or a future event as well. A phrase you might encounter is as, then usually an adjective, as they come. So as blank, as they come. So when someone uses this phrase, they're trying to describe someone or something that they think is just the best example of that adjective, right? Of that particular quality. So an example of this, he is as hardworking as they come, right? If I say that about someone, I am suggesting I don't know anyone else that works as hard as that person. They, in my mind, are one of the best examples of that particular quality. Another phrase you might encounter is to have it coming. When this gets used, people generally are saying that someone is due for some punishment because they've acted badly. They've done something that's wrong, and so it's kind of like it's just going to happen. That's kind of that idea of something resulting will also be bad. So an example of this, she's had it coming ever since she lied to our boss. So lying to the boss, there's the bad act, right? And we're saying she's been due for some punishment and maybe something else bad happened as a result of that. Another phrase you might encounter is to come alive. This could mean that someone or something is becoming excited, it's becoming filled with energy, or if we're talking maybe about a particular space, it's becoming filled with activity. An example of this might be, the class really comes alive when it's time for pronunciation practice. I actually had this experience a few years ago. We had kind of different activities, and my first one of the day, usually people are rather quiet. They might have still been waking up a bit in the morning, but by the time we got to that, I had a group who was really interested in improving their pronunciation. They were so excited and they were so engaged and willing to try different things and practice different things with their partners. One last phrase for today, and that phrase is to come to one's senses. This generally means that we or someone, doesn't have to be ourselves, we can be talking about anybody with this, but that person is beginning to think in a sensible way, or maybe what we think is a correct way, after being kind of foolish or maybe having the wrong idea about something. So I want us to pretend for this example, we have somebody who's like, I'm going to do all of this by myself. And we think, oh, that's ridiculous. That's crazy. That's too much for one person. So eventually we might say to our friend, have you finally come to your senses and gotten some help, right? So we are definitely expressing our own thoughts or opinions when we use this phrase, because we're suggesting that someone wasn't thinking in a sensible way earlier. Thank you so much for watching part 1 of this discussion of the verb come. I hope you'll tune in tomorrow or tune in later whenever you happen to be watching this. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.